Hey there everyone, Fluff here, and I'm not going to bore you with a long-winded intro or anything today. We know why you're watching. The title of this video is pretty self-explanatory. So here are 3 Pioneer decks that are so cheap that you can rent them for free online for 1 week using a trial of Mana Traders rental system. I'm not sponsored by Mana Traders, but God, I wish I was. And these decks also come to under $50 in paper at the time of recording. Alright, let's get straight into it. Alright, first I'm going to show you a slightly more expensive non-budget list. These lists are still pretty cheap, but then I'll show you how to bring it under that 20 ticks limit for Mana Traders or under $50 in paper. So first up we have a MonoU Tempo deck. You could also call this a devotion deck because it does run Master of Waves, but it doesn't run Nykthos like your standard mono green or mono black devotion decks. The idea here is to drop some very efficiently costed threats, protect them with some very efficiently costed counterspells, refill the hand with Curious Obsession, Gadwick the Wise and 1 copy of Treasure Cruise, and finally close out the game with a big Master of Waves. It's one of those decks that when you look at it, it looks very simple, and it probably kind of is to play. You're going to get the general strategy of the deck very easily, but then figuring out the exact right lines, when to interact, when not, when to let things go, when to counter spells, is going to make for some pretty interesting games, I feel. Now, like all of the non-budget lists here, this is a 5-0 list from MTG Goldfish. This from the user, I'm going to have to read this out, 452379603, who managed to run through a league and 5-0 that league. And the cost of the deck is mostly in those 2 copies of Thassa, God of the Sea that you see there. So we've taken those out and we've put in 2 Dive Down in their place. And this is what the list looks like. So although Thassa, God of the Sea and Dive Down don't look like very similar cards, the idea behind them in this deck is actually somewhat similar. So Thassa is a very resilient threat, whereas Dive Down is going to make the threats that you've already got a lot more resilient by giving them hexproof and more toughness. So it's either going to blank removal or make them perform better in combat. Either way, if you do choose to play this deck, you've got a very clear upgrade plan there. You just need to get the money for your Thassa, God of the Seas, take out the Dive Downs, put in the Thassas, and then you've got a full 5-0 non-budget deck. The current online price of this budget deck is 17.95 ticks, and in paper it's $59. However, $10 of that $59 is pent up in the 4 copies of Mystical Dispute that you're seeing there. That's an Eldraine uncommon, so there's a good chance you've already got them, but if not, the price of it has just been bolstered by its popularity in Standard. Give it a couple sets and it'll either rotate out or become much less valuable, and you'll be able to pick them up for cheaper. In the meantime, you can always replace it with maybe another couple copies of Spell Pierce, maybe some other cheap counter spells or interaction or something like that. So if you already have them, or you don't mind taking them out of the side and waiting until the price returns to a more normal level, you can consider this a very, very playable sub $50 deck. Alright, next up we've got a Boros Feather the Redeemed deck. You might already be familiar with this kind of deck either from Commander or from its popularity in Standard. The idea is play Feather the Redeemed, play a lot of very cheap spells targeting your creatures, and then close out the game that way. You get a lot of interaction, you get a lot of value, but the deck is very contingent on you being able to cast Feather quickly. Bringing this deck into Pioneer from Standard, we do get a couple of really nice things. We get Monastery Swiftspear, which is probably the best 1-mana red drop ever printed, at least in my opinion. I love the Monastery Swiftspear, maybe it's just because I started playing in Khans, I don't know. We also get the Heroic cards from Theros. Now, we're going back to Theros in the next set to come out, so it's very possible we might even see some more Heroic cards to make this deck even better. Currently, we've got the Favoured Hoplite and the Phalanx Leader, in addition to the 10th District Legionnaire, which doesn't technically have Heroic, but has a Heroic-like effect. And then, as far as the non-creature spells go, we're running a lot of the ones that you're probably familiar with from Standard. We've got Defiant Strike, we've got Gird for Battle, we've got God's Willing, we've got Reckless Rage. I'm not sure if Titan Strength has been Standard legal with Feather, and Expedite is a new one, well, an old one, I guess, technically, but for Pioneer, makes the deck a little bit faster, gives you creatures haste, and draws a card. Super sweet. Now that 5-0 list was from the Magic Online player Ongakun. I hope I'm pronouncing that as Ongakun would want it to be pronounced, and lands definitely make up the bulk of this deck's priciness, especially in paper. You've got $40 for a playset of Sacred Foundry, $30 for a playset of Inspiring Vantage, $4 each for 3 Clifftop Retreats. So take those out and you're looking at an $80 reduction in the cost of this deck, bringing it to around $50. Now taking these out is going to be a pretty significant hit to the mana base of this deck, which is always bad, especially in an aggro deck. But there are two sort of not so bad things about this. One, the most expensive card here, the Sacred Foundry, is just like the Mystical Disputes in Mono Blue. It's more expensive because of its standard popularity, so there's a chance you've already got them, or there's a chance you can wait and get them for cheaper, and even you'll have an easier time trading from them from standard players because they're more likely to have them in their folders. And the second thing is, it means you can play fundamentally the same deck, just with worse lands, and you've got a very clear upgrade path if you decide that you do like the deck and you just want it to run more consistently and faster. However, if you are planning to play this deck online, I would recommend putting the Sacred Foundries back in. They're only 2 ticks for the full playset online because they're included in treasure chests, which has brought their price down pretty massively. For even more budget-friendly options, maybe take a look at the sideboard. Think about removing Wild Slashes, replacing those with Shocks, possibly taking out the Wear Tears for any kind of artifact removal you want. The enchantment side will come up less frequently, and you can definitely get this deck to under $50 in paper. Alright, just before we talk about our last deck, I want to hear something from you. So I stream over at twitch.tv/foyfluff, and I want to know which of these budget decks you want to see me run through a 5-0 league live over at Twitch. I will, of course, upload the VOD and perhaps even a summary to YouTube, but I want to know which of these 3 decks you'd be most excited to see run through a competitive league. But first, let's take a look at white-green Bogles. Now this is a 5-0 list from the Magic Online user The Prodigy, and if you don't already know how Bogles works, the idea is you're going to stick 1 or 2 hexproof creatures and then load them up with a lot of really powerful enchantments. So Ethereal Armor and All That Glitters are going to make your Bogles, well, they're not technically Bogles, it's named after Slippery Bogle, but that's not actually Pioneer legal. But Ethereal Armor and All That Glitters are going to make your hexproof creatures, Bogles for simplicity, much more powerful for every enchantment that's added onto them, and it's really difficult for opponents to interact with this. Not many people are running edict effects that make you sacrifice things. Really the only thing that can kill these Bogles is a board wipe. So Supreme Verdict is going to be the natural enemy of this deck, but if you're playing against a white-blue deck that you think is running Supreme Verdict, you just need to figure out how much you want to commit to the board so that you can still rebuild after the Supreme Verdict. It's a very difficult deck to interact with. It's a very fun or frustrating deck to play. It's one of those it either wins by a mile or loses by a mile sort of decks. Very fun. But let's talk about how we can make it more budget. So this is another deck where the lands are the most expensive pieces in it. Replacing player sets of Sunpetal Grove, Temple Garden and Temple of Plenty with either basics or top lands like Evolving Wilds and Blossoming Sands is going to shave $60 off the price of this deck in paper and brings the deck below the 20 ticks limit for MTGO as well. So once again, if you have those lands already, great, stick them in. If not, maybe try the deck without them, see how you like it, and then as I say, you do have a clear upgrade path once you've decided that you like the play of the deck. Now, accepting those lands, the other pricey cards in this deck are playsets of SRAM, Senior Edificer, who is really crucial to the deck's success. He's both an engine, a draw engine, and he's also a third of all the creatures in the deck, so you really can't afford to go without him. And Dromoka's Command, which is less essential, but it is incredibly good. If you want to go super budget, you could replace the Dromoka's Commands and the deck would still function, sort of the same, but they're really going to bump up the power level of the deck if you can afford them. So that's everything that I have got for you today. All of the links to these decks, both the budget and non-budget versions, are in the description box below, so have a look down there if you want to go out and test any of these decks. As I say, that Mana Traders rental account will allow you to test any of the budget lists for 1 week for absolutely free. I'm not sponsored by Mana Traders, however it will be my affiliate link down there, so it will give me a small kickback if you do decide to pay for the service. I've been using it for a little while now and I really enjoy it. I'm on a 350 ticks plan, and that allows me to rent basically any deck in Pioneer, and I've been having a lot of fun doing so do consider it. I think it's definitely a strong idea while the Pioneer metagame is still in so much flux. You don't want to be buying into cards that might get banned, or other cards might get banned and make that deck completely unplayable. But anyway, please don't forget to comment which deck you would like to see ran through the league the most. Please do subscribe if you'd like to see more Magic the Gathering Pioneer content, because that's what we're making. And, you know, like this video, share this video. Both of those things really help the channel out a lot. But for now, have a great day, keep being cool, and have fun. See you.